Okay, we on? Yes, we're on. Perfect. This is quite a panel of experts. So, if you have a particular question that you'd like to ask them, please let me know and we will put it to them. Keep it clean. So we're going to start by asking, when is AR and VR going mainstream, if it hasn't already? And I'll just ask like one or two of you to respond. So since we only have one woman on the panel, we're going to her first.
I think there are several factors that are depending on that. Closer, eat it. There are several factors depending on that. Obviously, you know, we need to get a technology ready, make it a seamless experience. I think we still need to do a lot of user research on this. My experience with innovation projects is actually that to start something innovative as this, we have to look into areas where there's a direct need for human beings. In this case, I think the medical sector, as we saw today, is a really good area to start and to develop AR and VR to the next level, to the next steps. To go mainstream, I think also the pricing of products, services, and these things will play a big role.
If I can just ask everyone, if you're interested in listening, to make this a lot easier for everyone, if you can just step forward, get involved in the panel discussion so you can pose your questions. Right over here, come on close. This is reality. Come on up. That's it. Thank you, Mr. Killicanoon. Anyone else coming on up? And get your questions ready. Okay, so AR and VR, when is it going mainstream? To the man in the t-shirt.
I think one thing that really changed everything was when when Google got behind VR initiative and turned YouTube into being able to have 360 videos, because the truth of the matter is, like, not everybody is going to have these high-end headsets. The Google Cardboard is a great idea because it just made it accessible and cheap for everyone. But the fact that right now on your computer or on your smartphone, you can just pull it out, experience a 360 video by either looking around or even just using your finger. I think that's what has helped already push at least that sort of level of, it's not really virtual reality, but it's halfway there, and that's what's helping, I think, it go mainstream.
Yeah, from an investment point, that we've got the top 5 internet companies in the world: Facebook, Google, Amazon, Microsoft, and so on. So they're all invested in AR and VR. From a brand perspective, you got the top sporting franchises, entertainment companies, fast-moving consumable good companies, and of course banks who have customer engagement issues, all have invested in AR and VR. So 2016, when it goes to that next step, it'll be because pretty much every electronics company has also entered the space. So we had a time a few years ago when almost every electronics company entered the tablet space because Apple proved it. Next year is actually the equivalent, where every electronics company, more or less, will have their own eyewear. So we're moving from the hand to the face. That's suggesting a lot.
I think it was Steve Mann who just a few months ago was asked, what's it like? And Steve Mann is one of the sort of godfathers of augmented reality. And a reporter in the US asked him, what's it like to be here in AR at the dawn of the age of AR? And he said, it's not dawn, it's mid-morning, and it's looking like a beautiful day. So I think we're actually in the midst of it right now. You may not be seeing it every day on a consumer level, but I think that when it comes, there'll be a lot of people involved in content creation, especially brands and storytellers out there. They're going to be scrambling to understand what is a whole brand new space. It's nothing like filmmaking. It's like theater. It is three-dimensional spatial storytelling. And I think if you're not starting out in that right now, you're crazy. Just starting to learn it, just a bit.
for what it's worth, not that I know anything about this particular industry, but I think it's when you can tell stories which relate to people. So, for instance, this evening I found out that I could do karaoke virtually, and I'm never going to do karaoke in reality. So that to me says, oh, I can see some reason that I would actually use it. I could hide behind an avatar and sing. That's the only way it's ever going to happen. Okay, beautiful. So what's held it back? Is it the fact that people such as myself just don't actually understand the use of it? Karl? As in people, as in me, as in like just your ordinary human being?
Yeah, I think the consumers are definitely going to need to get educated. I mean, this is such a new technology. I mean, people have been hearing about both AR and VR for a really long time, but they haven't seen a lot of, examples of something that actually works. People are excited about it, but they don't really know what to expect. They need to be educated. And also, I think they have some probably incorrect ideas about, virtual reality, like I was talking about in my talk, about it being antisocial or this or that. I think they need to be shown. So I think the thing that accelerates it, though, is events like this. Really, you need to try it. When you try it, you become a believer. So you have to get out there and try it, and that means that people that want this industry to take off, they have to show it. They have to become an evangelist. You have to show up at events, give demos. It's all about the demo. The demo makes someone a believer.
Yeah, absolutely. Anyone else would like to comment on that? Would you like to... What's held it back? Commenting on what's held it back?
Actually, yeah, I think something that has held it back is that there's a lot of applications that have been out there, and people have been encouraged to download those applications, and they might get one or two experiences out of it, and they see that experience and they think it's pretty cool, but then that's kind of it. There's no others. They might need to download a new app, or that process has taken too long to get to that point. And obviously that's changing, with the advent of, videos going into YouTube and an easy medium to be able to upload this content and then to visualize and see that content. So it's a lot faster to get that content out there, and it can change on a whim. So as that becomes more prolific, I think more and more people will adopt it, because it can be a bit like Facebook. I can see something new every day.
So we're now in our 5th year, pretty much, of augmented reality commercialization. And it's really not until the last year or so we've really had business-savvy people leading augmented reality companies. Before that, we were still pretty much fresh out of the lab. So we're now starting to see people able to apply appropriate business models to augmented reality. There has also been, back in 2010 to 2012, some technical limitations. Those have been lifted now. To virtual reality, the technical limitations, you can look around, as amazing and life-changing as it is to have a HTC Vive experience or an Oculus experience, you've still got a cord tangling you up, and you've still got a little bit of a bulky headset. But what I feel I can share with confidence with everyone is, this is changing faster than any electronics have changed ever in history. And in the next 6 to 12, 24 months, this is going to be a situation where we may even be able to cut that cord and halve the form factor of these headsets. And that will invite more people in, because we'll need less bandwidth, we'll need less power, and we'll have greater resolution, we'll have greater believability, and we'll have, in fact, less people sick from virtual reality nausea, and it might be 5 to 15%, depending on what eyewear you have now, but as HTC Vive has proven, it's almost 0% nausea from virtual reality. So the real world and the digital world are pretty soon in a perfect marriage. They've just been going through a few hiccups the last 5 years, but by 2016, they'll be in a very nice marriage, living happily ever after.
I was going to say, what's holding it back? Advertising agencies. I'm joking, actually, but am I? Campaign-based augmented reality and virtual reality is holding it back. People who are just trying stuff with no vision about what it could become. People who aren't building products, who aren't building platforms, who aren't looking at what they're doing next month and in 6 months and in 12 months, who aren't willing to build an audience and then listen to that audience and iterate in a world that is a whole new user experience and potential customer journey. I think that is probably one of the things that's been holding back augmented reality and virtual reality the most.
Yeah, that's awesome that you said that, David. And maybe one last thing. Obviously, this conference is called Convergence. I don't pronounce it correctly because I'm German. But it's about converging this technology with other emerging or already existing technologies. Right now, I'm really seriously looking into co-funding a Kickstarter project. It's called Aora. It's an Australian product where you can actually 3D scan anything you like from a mobile phone. It's amazing. It's super disruptive. But just imagine when you combine virtual and augmented reality with another emerging technology such as 3D printing. When you actually go beyond this one technology, it's absolutely amazing. And there's so many amazing pioneers. Look at these guys in a row that actually make this possible. And yeah, I think that will make it mainstream as well. You know, we bring it to the people, really, the makers, the ones that never tirelessly work on innovation. So that's I think what makes it as well. Same with Internet of Things, IoT, converge that with these technologies. We're just in front of a big tsunami of amazing experiences and storytelling.
Is there a race on between AR and VR? So are they collaborators or are they competitors?
You want to kick this one off?
Yeah, first of all, I'd like to say that the numbers in the AR, VR industry, at least here in Australia, and I think growing into America perhaps, is that it may be 30-70. And generally across tech, we're starting to see more females welcomed into technology. Because AR, VR are essentially also about storytelling. So really great to have that representation. Are we in a race and are we in a debate? I would have said 6 months ago, like in an event called AWE, which is the pinnacle event for augmented reality, there was an absolute shit fight between AR and VR. And now though, people are starting to see how experiences, and within one application, you can go from an AR voyeuristic experience to a VR immersion, and they work hand in hand. So I think we're more partners now than really competitors. Having said that, 6 months ago, if you asked, I think some people in the VR industry, they would have said, AR, step aside. Let us take the next year or two, come back after, we'll just cream it now because we're easier to sell, because we've got Google Cardboard and we've got these more accessible options. So now there's, I think, starting to be a slightly different attitude. We're starting to work together, and in a sense, we're working on the same continuum. So we're seeing more partnerships.
Beautiful.
So I think a good context of it is that, yeah, they can work together. What I really like about augmented reality is that I can take a camera and I can look at something, it recognizes that, and then it can associate content to it. So let's put it in the context of, say, a safety and training example. So I could have a big, I don't know, oil truck or something, you know, with petroleum or gas. And I could look towards that, and it gives me the latest safety alert, for instance, that's telling me what not to do. Now, that's a direct link between that, and it could certainly send out a great message. Now, how I could put that scenario into VR is that I could have that same scene, not actually have to be in that hazardous area, but obviously immerse myself within it. So you're still explaining the same thing, but you can contextualize it in two different ways.
Yeah, I guess for me personally, I had a big interest in virtual reality 20 years ago, and you know, technology, was not affordable. You know, my first, I guess you could say, real VR experience was as a kid going on one of these motion rides where you climbed into this big capsule and it was wraparound screens and it all moved, and you know, that's an expensive bit of gear. You know, but a Google Cardboard is, you know, a few dollars. So, you know, there's that accessibility now. And probably about 5 years ago, I got into augmented reality because the technology was there. We all had, most of us had mobile phones which had GPS in them, which had cameras. So we could, be in a place, the program would recognize where we are and it could start overlaying information onto that real world through the camera in our phone. So for me, I've had these two interests sort of running side by side for a long time. And for me, there's one project I'm working on at the moment, which is the perfect marriage of those. And it's a tourism-based thing, so it's VR until you get there. And then once you're there, it's AR. So you're in the real place, but you want to learn more. Pull out your phone, point it at something, and it goes, great. This temple, which was constructed in whenever, this is what it used to look like when it was built. Or here's an ancient ceremony which would have happened. And that's what is really exciting about AR for me, is it's this really powerful education tool. Whereas VR might be about sort of losing yourself in another world, AR is more about enriching the world around you.
Yeah, I don't see them as competing technologies at all. I see them as extremely complementary. I think any type of experience that you can do with VR, you can also do with AR, although it will be a little different. But the thing that's interesting is that everything that's good for AR is good for VR, and vice versa. And I think one of the coolest things for AR people about the VR resurgence is that VR is the best possible tool to prototype AR. You can prototype everything without waiting for the display technologies to catch up, for the tracking to catch up. So you can prototype great AR right now inside of VR. So I think, all the hype around VR right now, this is really good for AR too. And vice versa. And eventually they will meld and merge. That said, it is interesting. There are different types of personalities are attracted to one technology or the other as far as the early developers or entrepreneurs. It's a very different, like AWE, it's a very different type of community at AWE than it is at a VR event. That disturbs me a little bit. I'd like to see that go away. I'd like to see it converge.
On the back of that, AWE is being the pinnacle event for augmented reality, but I guess as we've seen it, it's a love-in. And it's people who are already converted. And what we'd like to see is events where new people to the industry are exposed to the amazing developers and demos. And I think it was a perfect point in as far as, yes, VR environment is a great prototyping environment for AR, my word. So more and more, we're going to see, I think, developers crossing over both technologies. It's very encouraging.
I was just going to say, it was interesting this year at the Augmented World Expo. It was the first time we had VR there. Scott and I have been going for a few years. And it was funny, I stood outside because they were in two separate halls. And I pointed to the AR expo sort of area and I said, that's Wozniak and Computer Club. And the VR area is jobs. And that's sex, drugs, and rock and roll. And when you walked in, there was someone in an Oculus Rift who was hanging in what looked like a sex swing with fans on them, flying through the sky, and I just went, come on AR, more sex, drugs, and rock and roll. But right now, a lot of my colleagues in the augmented reality industry, they've gone pure industrial, because industrial and enterprise, they're seeing huge results with augmented reality being used, heads-up display inside mines, on oil rigs, in construction of drones and war machines and satellites. They're seeing 40% increases in productivity, 90% decreases in mistakes. And so therefore, a lot of the AR is moving over into that area right now, but I actually think we just need more sex, drugs, and rock and roll.
Just from a user experience point of view, I think one interesting fact is that I would say that augmented reality is probably a bit more challenging to create a really good one, a really good experience, just because we obviously have two environments we're dealing with. We have the real environment that we are in, and then obviously the augmented reality. And to get that right, we get a lot of inputs. We get a lot of different inputs from the outside world, from this augmented world. I think that's more challenging. Whereas, when you do the VR experience, you get this whole complete experience. You can really fascinate people. You can actually as a creator, really create this unique world for the user, which I encourage you all to do. Here you go, Scotty.
Thanks, Anet. So one of the statistics included in the promotion of this event was the research by DigiCapital that the industry expectations by 2020 for augmented reality would be 120 billion.
Oh, you just stole my thunder. I was going to get them to guess. Ah.
Oh, damn.
Okay, off you go, Scott. Go on.
I should have had my AR head-up display to see the next question. So if I may...
Away you go.
All right, great. And when Mark Zuckerberg invested $2 billion into VR, and probably the year prior, and then following that investment, all the news was about about VR. But we've only just seen in the last 6 months, fairly much relating to that DigiCapital announcement, augmented reality is expected to be 4 times greater by 2020. And I went along with that, and I said, yes, that's what I've been saying for 4 or 5 years. Now you can believe me, and of course, a lot of the venture capitalists started kind of moving across. But what they didn't realize, they're moving in the same area in a way, potentially. But then only in the last month, I've started to feel, actually, VR, once we cut the cord, once we deal with compression, once we cut the form factor, it has just as much right to be as large as augmented reality industry-wise.
So you don't think it's going to be the poor cousin forever?
I think in the next 5 years, AR will be a factor multiple of the VR industry, and the big VCs are getting behind this. But over 10 years, communication is the new transport. AR, VR as communication are going to be the new transport, and possibly, dare I say, move over Uber.
Okay, so does anyone have a differing opinion to to what Scott was just putting forward there? David?
You need a mic, mate.
I'm probably drinking from the same Kool-Aid a little bit, but just to say that a lot of people still don't understand the difference between virtual reality and augmented reality, and I should probably just make that very clear right now. Technically, virtual reality is where you see a virtual environment all the way around you. There is nothing from your real world inside that environment. Once you add something from that real world, just the smallest thing, suddenly that becomes augmented reality, or at least mixed reality. So if you've tried the HTC Vive, if you're going to try the new Oculus CV1, when you can see your hands in front of yourself, to some extent, you're augmenting your reality. But really, if we're going to speak categorically about it, augmented reality is being able to overlay digital information on the world that you have a spatial relationship with. So if people are wondering how augmented reality can be a $20 billion industry in 2020 in 4 years versus virtual reality, I love virtual reality for training, for creating some empathic muscle memory around tasks, for gaming, for going to other places and transporting yourself. And although you're very active, you are still, to some extent, in a constrained and safe environment. What I have here is the Oosterhout Design Group R6. So this device is an augmented reality device, one of the first out there. The basis of this device is actually the basis of Microsoft HoloLens. So the field of view is about 40 degrees. To think, this is a very early prototype, really, but to be able to walk around your world with something with slimmer form factor to this, to no longer need laptops, to no longer need computer screens, to be able to look at something and just ask, what does that mean to me? And it says, well, you were last here, and this is actually a building built by Frank Gehry. And, so to actually have all the world's information, all the internet's information overlaid upon your eyes. There was a great quote from Ori Inbar, who's the head of the Augmented World Expo, when they did it in China just recently. And he said, if you are working beside someone who has an augmented reality display and they are doing their job, the same job as you better, would you choose not to wear it? And that is why augmented reality, just purely if it gives us 1% superhuman capabilities on top of what you can do today, is going to be an absolutely massive industry and will essentially, with an Android processor and this running KitKat and 64 gigabytes memory, going to overtake and get rid of what we know as mobile.
Until those glasses look like the pair of Oritons that I wear, they ain't going mainstream. On that note, we have to wrap it up. Does anyone have a last comment? Because apart from Scott, who I've emceed before, and I know how much he likes to talk.
So I think that's a very valid point. You know, the technology is super cool, and obviously technologists, you know, we adopt it quite quickly, but until wearables, for instance, can go mainstream, it really is all about the form factor, the ergonomics of it, and I guess if you put one of those things on so that the general public are not underwhelmed by the experience. So it is always about the content, and it's also about, obviously, that form factor, you know. So it will be probably a few years until those wearables are probably more prolific, hence probably why the virtual reality is taken off mainstream, because you don't really care, because you're completely in kind of, you're not aware of your surroundings, perhaps.
Any other comments?
Yeah, I'm definitely a self-proclaimed geek, and I think the geeks of the world are very necessary to bring this technology forth, but it's the storytellers and the creatives that we really need now to jump on board with both of these technologies to tell compelling stories and to bring it into the mainstream.
Okay, I would like to say, because I have so much to talk about. In Australia, we have a huge opportunity, and it's not much of a flight to Silicon Valley. We have some enormously talented people around here. And for 3 events in a row, our meetup groups have been bigger than London, bigger than New York. A mixture of business people, developers, demos, and all the rest. So I really want to strongly encourage everyone to get involved, get your hands dirty with augmented and virtual reality. And please sign up. Get involved this month before Christmas. Don't put it off. That's it.
So with emerging technologies, it's ladies last, not ladies first anymore. I'm all about user experience, so what I want to say, it's an amazing opportunity, you know. Go play, have a go at it. Try to find balance. I think that's really important. Too much of one thing turns into the opposite. I talked about that with my team today. Too much interaction, too much up and down, too much roller coaster experience. People will start to feel miserable about it. It turns it into the opposite experience. I think that is really important to have in mind next to many other things. But go test it. Try something really simple. Test it with your surrounding network. Develop it to the next level. Do it agile. Do it simple. Don't set high barriers. I think that's the best way how to look at it and to get started. And you can take any theme on you want, right? Take your favorite theme. Maybe it's medical. Maybe it's something you have a direct need for, and go for it. I think it's amazing, and there's so many more things to happen.
And just to final statement, sorry, I know you were meant to be final. I've sat in front of hundreds and probably thousands of people one-to-one and seen their first experience with augmented reality, and I've seen their eyes pop out of their head and their jaws drop. I mean, if you could just create a reel of that, you know, like every day of the year photos, people would be blown away. But the one thing that I've seen more than anything else is everyone wants to have a look. Everyone wants to know what it is, but innovation is not an armchair sport. It's not something you sit back and you just watch. And innovation is also not just doing something different. It is doing something new. And I would encourage, like, anyone out there to actually understand that this is an incredibly innovative space, but it is also an incredibly inevitable space. So you get in now or you get in later. But as Ralph Wusterhout said when he was on Late Line the other week, anyone who is in AR and VR right now will be walking naked through the streets of opportunity. And literally his words, check it out on ABC Online. So everyone is here tonight. You've got a view into it. you have an opportunity to be pioneers, and hopefully we'll all meet each other naked on the streets of opportunity.
Interesting offer there, David.
wish.
Thanks for wrapping up. Thanks to our panel. They were amazing. Give them a round of applause. Awesome information. Thank you very much.